Hi everyone, today we will be retelling the manga, Dawn of the Forerunner. I will tell you in a few words what this manga will be about. Here the main character, Yugon, gains abilities that allow him to see things that the rest of us don't notice. As he grows up, our protagonist's life changes drastically when he is confronted with an insane reality. And Gon's powers spiral out of control. This is a story of love and adventure told through the lens of a new 21st century hero. It all begins with a short monologue by the protagonist. He stands on the water surface, blessed by the rising sun, and talks about how he has always been aware of his obvious difference from others. All the myths and legends of the world, the fictional characters, whatever they were, they spoke to him. But once he answers, his life changes dramatically. He is tormented by only one question: why me? So, it's an ordinary morning. The younger sister, Yu-song, wakes up the protagonist, whose name is Yugong, who apparently spent the whole night tinkering with his bike in the basement, because as his sister noticed, it smells like oil. Their house is in a new neighborhood on the outskirts of Seoul, at the foot of the farthest mountain. The buses rarely show up there, and to avoid waiting for them, Yugong gives his sister a ride to school on his bicycle. The hero himself has to ride to school for about 20 minutes, so he always rushes like a madman, not paying attention to everything that happens around him, because he has modified his bike more than once and it can withstand the extreme power of Yugong. He makes it to school in 5 minutes. The tire was smoking from such speed. He strapped on his iron horse and went to the gates of Bukshin High School, a place where only scum study. As soon as he steps through the gates of the school, he feels the atmosphere. A high school student comes at him and slaps him in the face. Luckily, the bully is immediately stopped by Yoon Suk-ji, a former officer and teacher nicknamed Chain Dog. The classroom is always noisy, but when Yugong walks in, all the chatter stops. He goes to his seat, sits down at his desk and takes out his dumbbells from his bag. The class has started, but Yugong is lying on his desk because his nightmares have made him forget to sleep. The dreams he has are painful. In his dreams he feels as if he is being torn apart, his bones breaking one after another. He writes it all off to the disease and its attacks, the problem of which is that their arrival is impossible to predict, but their occurrence frightens him very much. The hero describes his condition as the worst possible. He feels like his whole body is on fire. He is constantly holding back from screaming in pain and shedding tears. Even though it is a dream, it hurts unrealistically. It occurs to him that he may not be human at all, because his arms are so strong that he can squeeze and crumple a dumbbell like a piece of paper. Yugong was approached by a guy with a broken arm, his friend Jong Yushik, a very active and honest guy who has been studying with our hero for 2 years. Jong Yushik asked if Yugong was ready for the test, but he complained about the complicated name of the textbook on cellular microbiology. To which he replied that it was all a big deal. Suddenly, the hero is called by a girl, Jung Yuna, who is the head of the class. She asks him if he's busy next Monday. Jong Yushik jokes with her, saying that she's making a date. While the two of them were arguing, Gon looked at his watch. It was already 5 o'clock, and he had to drive up at 6 to pick up his sister. The hero hurriedly got up from his desk, but the headmistress asked him for help with the opening ceremony. Gon refused without thinking for a long time. Stunned by Yugong's behavior, the head girl, not knowing what to do, decided to take action. She let out a tear and grabbed the protagonist by the edge of his sleeve. Yugong realized that they wouldn't just let him go, so he agreed, for which the headmistress thanked him with embarrassment on her face. Next, we are taken to the teacher's room where teacher Yoon Suk-ji is angry that Yugong didn't show up at the appointed time. He was in the office with another teacher, Kim Young-myeon. Kim Young-myeon thought our protagonist had gotten into a fight, but Suk-ji said that Yugong had never been caught yet. Suk-ji wanted to send the protagonist to the competition, which Kim Young-myeon was shocked about. But Suk-ji was confident that he could handle it. It turns out that the main character hasn't had any conflicts with anyone since he was admitted, and no one complained about him, as teacher Suk Ji noticed this and turned to Kim Youngmayan with a smirk on his face, to which the other replied that he just had a normal class. While the conversation was going on in the teacher's lounge, Gon was looking at his cracked nails and falling hair. Looking at it, the hero thinks that his body is as if it can't stand up to its own power. Except that while he was standing there, a few guys approached him. They were the 6 men of some murky type, but they called him Senior. They called Yu Gong with them. Then we see a picture of several guys being beaten up, and the main character was standing next to the last one. It turns out that these guys found out that Yu Gong was the strongest in his last school and decided to test him, but unfortunately, they all got sick. The older guy, all beaten up and injured, asks Gong for mercy, to which he replies, "Spare you?" Next, the story moves to the gates of Yu Sona's school. She was called by her friend, Lee Gookie, who was a little late for school. Gookie asked who Sona was waiting for. Sona said her brother was supposed to pick her up at 6 o'clock. Lee Gookie was confused because they don't let her go to high school so early. But Sona said it wasn't the first time her brother had picked her up. Gookie asked Sona what happened to her brother in middle school. Sona said it was an accident, but everyone was saying that her brother was innocent, so she didn't really care and didn't know all the details. Her friend asked her why Gon was late, but Sona didn't know. We are again shown Gon and the 3 guys from the first chapter, who called him over to the elder. Gon decided to make a joke and said he wasn't interested in men, but they told him not to be a tough guy and to follow them. Gon followed them looking at the time on his cell phone, 5 hours and 40 minutes. And now Gon is standing in front of the elder, sitting and smoking on a bench. The elder asked if he was the kid who could break a stone wall. His 6s confirmed everything. The man said to hit him a couple times so he wouldn't do it again. Here comes the fight. The slow music in Gon's headphones has gotten even slower, everything around him has gotten too slow, all because his thinking has sped up rather than the world around him slowing down. Gon's body feels heavy and stiff, like he's in a swamp, but it still burns to the point of pain in his fingertips. He begins to see and feel differently, wider and faster. When his opponent looms over him, a touch of his finger sends him flying, but his unhealed fingernails are broken again, blood seeping from them. A second blow follows. The opponent aims a bat at his leg, but one careless swing of his foot shatters the bat into crumbs like a balloon bursting. Just a couple of movements, and the faces of the opponents show a serious fright. Gon, with a playful expression on his face, moves from one opponent to the other with just his fingers and gets closer to the latter. The latter, stunned by Gon's strength, makes a fist, but Gon stops his fist with one palm. Gon couldn't use his strength anymore, otherwise his pain would be many times worse than what the beaten Elder 6 had experienced, but the latter would have to undergo surgery, but he wouldn't be able to use his left hand like before, because Gon had shattered his hand. And it all happened in a matter of seconds. As Elder took one drag on his cigarette, Gon was already standing in front of him. "How is this possible? I don't believe it," he said and tried to stand up, but Gon sat him back down with a single finger. The Elder threw an insult in the heat of the moment, but Gon slapped him in less than a second. Before he realized what had happened, he was slapped a second time. His jaw still ached from the blow, his eyes darkened, and then a terrible pain pierced his left shin. Another blow followed, causing the Elder's teeth to grind together. As he fell to the ground, he realized that the bone was clearly broken, and his knee was dislocated. The Elder frantically went for the knife, but Gon crushed his hand with his foot. It was as if he had fallen out of reality for a few seconds, his mind filled with only 2 things: the intolerable pain and the fear that overwhelmed his will to resist. Gon looked at his watch again. 3 minutes had passed. Gon ordered the older man to obey unconditionally, which he agreed to without thinking. Gon took his cell phone and transferred all the contacts to himself. Taking the knife in his hand, Gon asked the man if he would talk, to which he replied that he would never tell anyone about Gon. With one swing of the hero's knife, the hair on the villain's head is gone. With the words, "Be a goody-goody," Gon walks off around the corner where he coughs up blood. If I had finished faster, this wouldn't have happened. Next, Gon wipes his mouth with a handkerchief, and prepares for the toughest part of rebuilding the body, resetting the bones, putting them back into their joints. He looked at the time and put his cell phone in his pocket, 8 minutes to 6 o'clock. The time factor is the most important factor for Yu Gong, as his body breaks down due to such exertion, not to mention his burning pain. Because of such side effects, Gong has always tried to minimize the time he uses his strength as much as possible, especially when it comes to fighting. Next, Gon was already rushing his iron horse down the road, thinking that he needed to speed up. Here he is already standing near the gate of Sona's school. It was almost 6 in the evening, 1 minute left. Sona must be tired of waiting for him. Gong was called out by his sister, and with her was Lee Gookie. Gong greeted Gookie, as they hadn't seen each other for a long time. She asked him if he really takes Sona every day, and Gon said it was part of his training. She was surprised that Gon sits on an old bike, for their family is not a poor one. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," said Gon, to which he was told, "No." Sona joined her brother and they left. Guka thought that Gon had become very handsome, and she blushed as she puffed up her cheeks. The next thing we see is a picture of Gong and Sona driving down the road. Sona tells her brother that Jonghyun has joined SY and she is jealous of her connections, to which Gong replies that he has confidence in his sister and she can do anything on her own because she is so smart. Sona also said that Gookie was wondering why Gon had been transferred from a middle school to another. Gon was silent, as if he had fallen asleep, which made Sona worry about his brother's condition. But Gon said he was fine. The night, the basement, and Gong sitting at the many screens. He wondered about Jonghyun. She was the granddaughter of the CEO of the company where her father had worked before he retired. She was also the same age as Sona. Before Gong entered high school, they lived in Haeung's father's house as a family. Their father had worked for him for a long time, rising through the ranks from the bottom. It is said that Gon's father was the president's favorite when he first got settled. Like his father, the president was an engineer who liked to invent things. He hired Gon's father as an assistant and taught him many things. The company grew and managed to go public on the stock exchange. It was largely thanks to my father's abilities, which he had been developing for a long time. Except that the next president was the son of the former president, who had studied abroad for an MBA. This guy hated Gong's father. Gong cursed the past president. How could he let this happen? After all, he hadn't seen his father since then. Every time Gong remembered it, his heart bled. According to the official version, Gong's father left the company because of his age, but what happened broke him. In a word, those memories were the most painful for him. He wished he could forget it all. Suddenly, Gong's phone rang. The number was unknown. Gong picks up the phone. "Hello," he asks who it is. A familiar voice came through. It was Haeung. "Hi, how are you?" asked Gong. Haeung told him to come to her house this Saturday. Gong wondered why, but Haeung joked that she just wanted to see him. "What? Against it? This will be your last meeting, I swear," came from the tube. Gon sighed and asked when he should come over. Haeung suggested by lunchtime, since that's when everyone would gather. Gong agreed and hung up the phone. In his mind, he was just wondering if something had happened to the president when suddenly, he received a notification from some Cha Min-so. The message said, "Please help me when I ask for help." The head of the class is sitting by the window, and she's feeling bad for grabbing Yu Gong by the edge of his sleeve. A classmate comes up to her and asks if she heard the news. The news was about that Cha Min-so from first grade. Cha Min-so? The head teacher interjected. She was a notoriously quiet student, but she almost killed herself last night. They say she slit her wrists, but luckily she was found and taken to the hospital. She was being bullied. I think it was Park Gyunyoung's gang. The girl heard that they took money from the girls and used it to buy cigarettes. While the head girl was being told all this, she was thinking. Park Gyunyoung is a gang member of Yoonok's gang, and I remember the head teacher's mom saying that her family was very rich. She was transferred to this school because of her violent temper. I think her dad was arrested for fraud just last year. Apple from the tree. The head teacher asked what happened next. Cha Min-so lives in a rather poor family, and today at lunchtime, her mother showed up at school. I guess she had a suicide note. She made a mess, of course. She cried and blamed the school for everything. All because the deputy headmaster turns a blind eye to violence in the school. She told the whole staff to keep quiet so that rumors wouldn't spread. It seems like Park Gyunyoung's gang has the whole class under their thumb, because they're also silent as rocks. Do you think Park Gyunyoung's parents paid for all this? A classmate asked the head teacher. The headmistress said yes, and clarified how much. The girl showed her her fist, which means the number 10. Head girl Young Yuna was shocked at what she had just learned. Next, Yuna started talking about how lucky they were not to have scumbags in their class. Yuna thinks about Yugong again. He sits behind her, number 1 on the list of students avoided by teachers and classmates alike. Even though she never once saw him studying, his grades weren't bad, at least he didn't get zeros like the other bullies. Nobody messed with him, and if they gossiped, it was behind his back. Maybe he's some kind of genius. Strange guy. Next, back in the teacher's lounge, Teacher Soga received several messages from Yugong. He apologized for not being able to make it, and also said that he couldn't make it today, tomorrow, and next week was unlikely. He will definitely be free for graduation. Sogi angrily shouted out that Gon was a lousy guy. Suddenly someone approached him. It was a female student. She begged the teacher to help Cha Min-so. I beg you very much. She needs help. The student said. Sogi interjected, Cha Min-so. Hadn't she heard that Sogi only solves fights at school? Only he wanted to start as the girl interrupted him and said she would complain. We were shown a name tag with the name Yoon Young embroidered on it. Turns out, it's Sogi's daughter. The whole Yoon family is pretty famous, and the daughter, like her father, is anti-violence. She followed in Yuna Soga's footsteps, standing up for the rights of the innocent. All because of one guy. Please, father. She begged Teacher Sogi. Okay, I'm listening to you, replied Teacher Sogi with obvious displeasure on his face. Next, Yugong had already arrived at Jong Haeung's mansion. He rang the intercom and entered the courtyard. It had been a long time since he had been here. He had spent almost all of his childhood here, but now this place was causing too many conflicting emotions. After all, on the territory of the mansion stood the house where his family had lived until they were evicted. I wonder who lives there now? Gong thought. A dog ran up to Gon. It had been a long time, and the dog had grown up. Gong wasn't surprised that the dog was still as active as ever. While he was sitting next to the dog, Haeung came up to him. What are you doing? She said. Gon greeted her, but she started to sarcasm that Gon had come to play with the dog, even though her grandfather had already waited for him. Haeung said that Gong never changed. Jong Haeung, 16 years old, Jong Myung's granddaughter. Yeah. And you're still as spoiled as ever. Gong thought to himself. She told him to shake off and wash his hands before entering the house or else he'd stain the front door. Gon remembered that Haeung had annoyed him a lot as a child. Next, we are taken to the living room where Jong Myung was sitting. He was reminiscing about the past. In his office, his son came up to him, and Myung asked if he had talked to Biko, Gong's father. But Jong Ilji, Myung's son, CEO, replied that he was too busy. Biko and his son Yugong annoy Ilji a lot. He says he admits his mistake, but he doesn't understand why Muyang needs Biko to work at all. He wants to finish the case himself. I admit my mistake, you say? Muyang said. And also added that if using the company's technology to steal is just a mistake, then what do you call a thug who kidnapped and threatened an employee of his own company? I didn't mean it, it's just a mistake too, do you think? Muyang interrupted his son. It turns out that Biko was the one who created the core of their company's technology, so Muyang needs his help. You can't. Ilch began to deny. He had summoned the best experts in Japan, so he said they would figure something out as soon as possible. Muyang thinks his son is too stupid, he doesn't understand the seriousness of the situation the company is in. On the contrary, Biko is too talented. Muyang heard that Haeyoung had signed a contract with an agency. Did you help? He asked his son. Ilji answered him that she really wanted it, so she asked him to help her granddaughter. Muyang decided she'd rather have the kid help her. The living room again, Gong walked into it and greeted his grandfather. Muyang asked how Gong had gotten on. Gong said he wished he could see his grandfather more often, but there was a reason why he couldn't. Muyang asked Gong about his father, if he was okay. He said that he rarely saw his father because he was always busy at work. Muyang understood and asked Gong how he was feeling, to which he replied that he was feeling better. So, still sick, Muyang said. But it's not progressing, replied Gong. Gong is a child who has come to terms with the pain of hell. But Muyang isn't in much health either, his left hand can barely move after the surgery. He tells Gong not to worry, because he's fine. The reason why Gong was summoned was because there was a request for him. He asked if Gong knew that Haeyoung was preparing for her debut in SY Entertainment. But he had been aware of it for a while now, since she had told him herself. Muyang asked him to keep an eye on Haeyoung, to which Gong had to agree. Gong checked a few things before coming here. Haeyoung is still the direct heiress of the company. And her father Ilji is the president of that company. He also checked the status of the very same company, Gauss Mechanics. Things are not going well for them. Gong even wondered what his grandfather would say. Even though they were not related by blood, their relationship was similar to that of kin. If it wasn't for Gong's mistake in the past. Muyang thanked Gong. He's taking good care of Haeyoung, so all Gong will need to do is look after her. Gong is like an older brother to her. Again a conversation from the past. Ilji was unhappy that his daughter would be helped by Biko's son, who he said had stolen a girl he liked from him. And this guy broke Muyang's arm. He was also unhappy that his father was still in contact with Gun. Muyang said he owed him. But Ilji wasn't happy with that answer. He knew that his father already paid for his shelter, food, and tuition. He considers Gon's family a threat to their business. Muyang said Gon is still his savior. Next, we are moved back to Gong and Haeyoung's father's room. Muyang offers to have lunch, to which Gon agrees. Next we're shown some blonde girl humiliating another girl. She sticks her head in the toilet and tells her to bring her $30 the day after tomorrow, and if she doesn't get even $10, she'll say goodbye to her kidney. She goes on to say that it is not difficult to find a job and raise some money. And if she doesn't have enough brains for elementary things, why is she treading the ground at all? The blonde girl kicked the girl a couple times and walked out of the bathroom. It was Park Gyunyoung. She was met by her comrades and they said that if she overdid it, she would end up like Cha Min-so. Park Gyunyoung was angry because she had asked them not to mention Cha Min-so to her. "Hey, I told you not to mention her in front of me," Gyunyoung said. She was standing in front of her 4 gangmates. One of the girls said that the Cha Min-so incident was funny. Teacher Sogi had pestered the principal a lot about it. Gyunyoung was confused that it was Teacher Sogi. She added that it looked like Yoon Young and her father wanted to help Cha Min-so. Gyunyoung was more than a little freaked out and went out to the balcony. While the others in the room were deciding what to order to eat, she was mulling over some ideas in her head. She'll need to get rid of the evidence somehow, but she immediately forgot about it because money will solve everything. Also just need to find a personal ATM like the guys do. She wants to organize her own pyramid scheme at school to siphon off more money. Most of the students have money, even that girl from the restroom brought Gyunyoung a lot of money. She can't keep pestering the guys, so she has to think of something. Cha Min-so is the cause of all the trouble, and if there's a fuss about what happened to her, the police might come. So far, the case has been hushed up, but how long will it last? Gyunyoung had an idea. She thought Brother Samuel would be the best person to do the job, so she called him. So, it's back to Gong's school. The head teacher and her friend ask her to take the camera away from 8th grade Lee Kwangpil because he's a bully, so she won't be able to do it herself. The headmistress advises Gong to take his friend, Young Yushik, with him, but he's off somewhere. Gong was already resigned to the fact that he wasn't going to get any rest. He had originally planned to take a nap. Since 2nd grade, he had decided to be an ordinary, quiet guy, but he couldn't do it. Gong asked why they needed a camera so badly, as they could do with a simple phone. He was told that the class was in charge of videotaping and the quality had to be good, so they needed a professional camera. Unfortunately, no one in the class had one. Gong hesitated, wondering if he was likely to be given the camera. The girls were confident that he could convince Kwangpil. That camera wasn't his, he had just appropriated it, he wasn't using it, but he wasn't giving it away either. At least he wouldn't give the camera to the fragile girls. Gong asked about other options, but there were none. Unless he had a camera himself. He asked about his actions, would he really have to force the camera away? But the head girl said that she would go to the 8th grade and Gong would have to go with her. What if I don't show up? Gong asked. The headman replied to him that she was really counting on him. Gong doesn't know why he's going to all this trouble, but he hopes his arm has healed by now. It hasn't hurt much the last few days, but he's not completely sure yet. Gong stinks from a mile away, and because of his strength, he's always on painkillers. So he decides he's not going to interfere with anything. At first, he led an active life and did not limit himself in his movements, until something happened that he could not have expected. He still found it hard to get used to the peculiarities of his body and the constant pain. It was as if he had been reborn. After a little thought, Gong asked for more information about this Kwangpil. The events continue at the school warehouse, where the 8th grade scum hang out. Young Yuna went inside and was immediately greeted by Lee Kwangpil. She asked for her school camera back. Kwangpil has had the camera in his possession for over 2 months. Yuna tried her best to convince Kwangpil to give the camera back. But he didn't listen to her at all. What he found was his, and that's it, he couldn't be convinced. Yuna asked him what he wanted for her, and Kwangpil was immediately interested. He offered to bring him $20,000 a day, but it would be cheaper with an advance payment, and Yuna would have to leave her student ID as collateral and bring the money in the evening. Yuna was shocked. How could anyone bargain for school property? She said she would tell the teachers. Kwangpil got angry, so he started pushing her against the wall. With a menacing expression on his face, standing right over Yuna, he tells her that she is just a simple bratty girl. He ordered the others to close the door to the warehouse so that no one could go inside. After all, he was going to make Yuna pay in kind. Yuna panicked. Kwangpil grabbed her face. He didn't come, she thought, but suddenly, a pen flew into the back of Kwangpil's head. He was shocked by this. He looked at his palm and it was covered in blood. He went into a frenzy. "What the hell, you bastard?" he shouted, and stepped away from Yuna. The one who threw the pen turned out to be Gong. He was standing at the entrance and couldn't button his fly. Everyone in the warehouse thought he was out of his mind. There was a door hinge and some bolts on the floor. Apparently he had just kicked the door in. Gon apologized to Yuna for being late, he just had to go to the bathroom. Kwanpil wondered who he was. Kwanpil's 6 men panicked. He asked them about this guy, he thought they knew him. They said it was the same Yugong from Yungam Middle School. As early as 1st grade, he was beating up 3rd graders. Rumor has it he beat up his teacher and got expelled. All in all, he's a dangerous guy, according to the rumors. Gwangpil would be surprised. Jungam High School is a prestigious school in Kannam, but even there, it's full of jerks. This place boasts its own unique traditions and hierarchy. Beating up 3rd graders? Gwangpil thought to himself. He was puzzled because he had never heard of this guy. Kwanpil suggested to Gong that he settle things man to man. He has a high pain threshold, so he likes fights because of his sensitivity. The one who is not afraid of pain often wins the fight. He's perfect for the role of a thug. A man who solved every problem with his fists. He made the first thrust, and Gon dodged it easily, analyzing his punch. Kwanpil's blow was very strong, as if a sledgehammer had passed by. All of Gon's senses instantly went into battle mode. Punch after punch, Gon continues to dodge. First he dodged the attack, Kwangpil's fist only grazed his shirt. He then tried to attack Gon's lower jaw with his knee, but he easily pushed him away. Kwanpil used the inertia of the push to turn around and follow up with a leg kick. He's definitely an experienced fighter. His movements are smooth and precise. He's strong, even in flexibility he's not lagging behind. Almost elbowed the hero in the face, but it's still slow for Gon. It's powerful enough, though. None of Kwangpil's 4 punches hit Gon. He thought to himself that it was as if Gon could see through his movements. Gon raised his hand and decided to tease Kwanpil, which was quite successful. He was furious. Kwanpil makes a dash with all his might and leaps at Gon with a scream. Next comes a picture of a battered Kwangpil wiping blood from his nose, and not even a scratch on Gon standing next to him. Still with a smirk on his face, Gon teases his opponent, asking how many fingers he can see. And Kwangpil's eyes are already double-visioned. Gwangpil is puzzled because Gong's blows hurt him a lot. His nose even bleeds, which makes him feel ashamed. Gon is so fast that Gwangpil can't dodge, and he gets hit in the face every time. The opponent doesn't even manage to hit Gon once. He asks him for the opportunity to punch him for once. The hero replies that he always uses "please" when asked for something. Kwanpil can barely dodge Gon's punches, what's to say he can successfully attack? This is the first time he sees such a strong opponent, and he ran straight at Gon while yelling furiously. But as soon as he noticed the swing of his opponent's fist, he instinctively backed away. He felt fear for the first time in years, many years later. The fist flew straight at him. But Kwanpil just stood there, unable to move. Goosebumps ran all over his body. He even felt as if Gong's fist had become many times larger. Lee Kwanpil realized that this was his end, and considered retreating. But Gong easily threw him upwards with a simple kick. All the people in the room were shocked by this. That a person could fly so high was simply unfathomable. It was also mind-boggling that it was done with 1 foot. As soon as Kwanpil started flying downward, Gon got ready and started throwing a bunch of punches. Kwanpil's body was flailing back and forth, but it never landed on the floor. The small room echoed with the sounds of the blows that never stopped. After a while, Kwanpil was lying face down on the floor, unable to move. Gon asked him about the price of renting a cell for a day, but as soon as Kwanpil tried to say something, he slammed his face into the concrete floor. Kwanpil, beaten to a pulp, managed to squeeze out 2 words, "take T-tac." The once fierce bandit trembled like a frightened kitten. Gong's facial expression changed drastically. He brought Kwanpil's swollen face close to his own, and gave him a choice between the 2. "Left or right, which eye will you choose?" Saying this, he took out a folding knife from his pocket. The knife was right in front of Kwanpil's eyes. Gon said the world would be cleaner if scum like him disappeared. Gon kept pushing with the knife at his eyes, and Kwanpil gave up. He swore he wouldn't do it again. Apparently you know you're doing a bad thing, Gon told him. Clenching his eyes tightly, Kwanpil desperately scratched the floor with his fingernails. Because Gon had decided to do otherwise. Kwanpil felt the cold touch of the blade on his hand. And when he opened his eyes, he saw the tip of the knife cutting his skin, very slowly. He shuddered violently, not from the pain. In fact, he didn't feel it, didn't even scream. He felt fear of Gon, and so he dared not utter a word. The torture was over. Gon decided to spare his opponent. If he continued, he would move the roof. This moron won't bother anyone else. Unfortunately, those who don't feel pain will never understand the pain of others, and that's the only way to teach them. Gon looked at the six and asked them why they were still standing there. Since they didn't scatter, Gon decided to teach them a lesson. When he approached the first one, he said that it was not good to bully others, and slapped him in a moment. The other one started to back away. He tried to stop Gon with words, but he was also slapped in the face, so much so that he flew to the first one. The third fell to the floor in fear and became completely harmless. After finishing everything, Gong handed the camera to Yuna. She saw for herself that the rumors about Gong were true. As it was getting evening outside, Gon and Yuna went back to school. Even if Yuna wanted to tell someone, what she saw couldn't be conveyed in words. "Is that it now?" Gon asked. Yuna told him that it was for now, but that she would need his help in the future. What was strange to her was that after witnessing such a picture, she somehow wasn't afraid of Gon at all. This is normal, right? She thought to herself. Next, we were taken to a coffee shop. Before that, Yuna had said that she still needed Gon's help, so she decided to treat him and invited him to the cafeteria. Gong was surprised by the head girl's kindness and thought it was funny. Yuna started by apologizing for just standing there. She was in shock. "That must have been really hard for you?" she asked Gon, trying to hide the fact that she was nervous. Gon noticed her strange behavior. Gong has no regrets because that Li Quangpil dared to raise his hand on a girl. So he got what he deserved. Someone who calls himself a man would never do such a thing. Gong watched a lot of action movies when he was a kid, but real life is often much worse. Gon tried his best not to use force, but Yuna's fragile body must have been hurt far more than his. He reached his hand to her shoulder, and said that he wouldn't do anything wrong. Yuna felt warm. It was as if a powerful wave of energy had traveled through her, the warmth spreading from her neck to her face as if she had taken some kind of medicine. Her body was wildly aching and shaking before, but now she felt better. "So, is it better now?" Gon asked Yuna. She said she didn't know. She still didn't understand what had happened to her, but she really felt better, so she wanted to thank Gon even more. Yuna asked Gon what he would like to eat. Gong asked her in surprise about her family's wealth. Is she so rich that she can pay for 2 people for dinner? She said her parents were middle class and her father was an orphan. Next day. The events unfold at the university. The professor is telling the audience about artificial creation of contradiction and paradoxical situations. Suddenly, the professor picks up a student wearing glasses and asks him a question. That professor was Yu Gong's mother, Ji Yongsuk. She asked a question on a story whose characters had argued vehemently in the last chapter. The guy needed to say what he thought was the cause of that argument. The guy started remembering a story. A man and a woman found a watch on a deserted island, and are arguing about whose watch it is. He started to answer, and said that the woman claims that someone had been on the island before them and accidentally left her watch behind. And the man thinks there is some magic involved, or maybe it's the value of the watch. The most embarrassing situation during class. The professor started to get indignant. Apparently the guy wasn't listening to her at all. She said that if he wasn't interested, he should leave the class and not waste his and her time. He promised he'd do his best, Ji Yongsuk thought to herself. What does the cost of the watch have to do with anything? Can you even justify your conclusion? The professor asked, and that was the end of the lesson. Later, Yongsuk was already on the phone with Gong. She asked if he had eaten. She said she was running late again and asked how Gon was doing. He replied that he was fine, and that he shouldn't worry about him, because he wasn't a little kid anymore. His mother apologized to him, but Gong said that if she was really sorry, she should give him more money for pocket money. He must have broken something again, Yongsuk laughed. Gon wanted to talk about his father, but his mother told him not to talk about it, the adults would take care of their own problems. That was the end of the conversation. Is that Mom? Sona asked her brother. He answered that it was. Sona said that she had recently talked to Haeyoung, and she told her that Gon would be going to visit them starting next week. Sona wondered why. The brother replied that Grandpa asked him to. Sona, worried, asked if her brother was sure, since he had not yet recovered from that incident. Gong said he was feeling better. His sister tried to change his mind, but his brother shut her up immediately by stroking her head. Everyone is so jealous of Gon, but it was nice for him to have such a caring sister. Gon sat with Sona over her lessons, apparently he's her personal tutor. He said the answer to an assignment was wrong. An assignment with an asterisk, Sona thought to herself. Her brother, in her opinion, was the only person who could solve such tasks quickly, except her father of course, he was Gon's mentor. And Sona lives among such monsters, she thinks she is very stupid against their background. And her mom is also very strict. Though her major is humanities like philosophy, history, economics, Sona is under constant pressure. Why can't everyone in her family just be ordinary people? It's school again, and in the teacher's lounge sits the newly appointed class teacher of class 2 to 5, the class the protagonist is in. It's been 3 days since Lee Ho-yun took over, but the previous class teacher hasn't told her anything. He answered as if he was following a pattern, carefully avoiding slippery topics. According to other teachers, class 2 to 5 was the most normal class in the school, normal kids who learn at their own pleasure without conflicts. But there are too many bullies in this school. Teacher Ho-yun thought about Yu Gong, she thought he must be impure. She would find out for sure. Another teacher came into the teacher's room and was surprised to see Lee Ho-yun in a good mood. Next comes a picture of Gon lying on the roof of the school, immersed in his thoughts. It's only been a few days since the battle with Gwanpil, and he's feeling surprisingly well. It was the first time he wasn't writhing in pain after a fight. Gon remembered his classes, and thought about skipping them, but he'd better not skip them. His father might not say anything, but his mother would kick him out of the house. We are transported to Gong's distant past. His body is breaking down in pain, his mom tells him to just lie down and rest. What follows is an argument between the parents and the doctors. Their son is so badly ill that he is about to die, and the painkillers are barely working. Once it happened that his father and mother were not around during another attack. The president noticed Gong's condition and ordered him to be hospitalized immediately. And then Gon heard his father and the president shouting loudly at each other for the first time. After all the examinations in the hospital, it turned out that no such diseases had been detected before. His body cells are constantly being destroyed, he may not even last a year. Gon was terrified, he had less than a year to live. An unknown disease, the doctors couldn't do anything about it. When he was hospitalized, his parents were arguing loudly with the doctor and it made Gon sick. At that time, he even felt hatred towards his parents. Later, his grandfather intervened in the argument. It all happened because of Gon. Grandpa got mad at his mom and dad, and they didn't talk to each other for a while. After that, everything happened. That's where Gon's dream ends. Are you crying? Gong Yuna hovered over him. Gon wiped his eyes and stood up. Yuna wondered why Gon was lying alone on the roof, but then she remembered that he was a loner. Gon asked what had happened. Yuna replied that she was just taking a walk. Gon decided to send her away, but Yuna insisted on talking to her. Gong said he was busy. Yuna decided to threaten him by spreading rumors that he was crying on the school roof alone. Once again, events are unfolding in the teacher's lounge. Teacher Soga is trying to find out about the Cha Minso incident from her classmates. The girl sitting across from Teacher Sogi says that she really doesn't know anything about Cha Minso. Sogi thought since they were in the same class, she would know what's going on. Sogi noticed that the students' hands were shaking. He asked her about Gyunyoung's possible intimidation, but she didn't say anything. Sogi said that it would continue if everyone kept quiet, so it would be a good idea to try to tell the truth. He told the student that she didn't have to worry because he would keep it a secret. The student broke down and started to tell, only she didn't know the details. Next we were shown Park Gyunyoung biting her nails in anger. Because of Minso, they are now calling all the victims and collecting dirt. An associate of Gyunyoung said that Hong Young-ju was called in today. Park Gyunyoung was furious, she cursed at Yoon Youngja. Gyunyoung tried to find out what Hong Young-ju had managed to tell her, but her companion hadn't asked anything yet. Gyunyoung was clearly unhappy with the whole situation. She was able to shut the director up, he won't say anything, she's managed to keep it quiet for now. But Yoon Seogi is different. He won't go against his principles. She decided to call Samuel, her brother. She asked him about what she had recently asked him for. He was surprised to hear about her problems with the police, because he thought she had already taken care of everything. He wondered how Gyunyoung was going to pay him for his favor. She asked him what he wanted. Samuel was pleased that she was a quick thinker. He said it would be done by tonight. Gyunyoung asked him for one more favor, she sent him Yoon Sogi's pictures. She needs all the information about him as soon as possible. Samuel asked her how many years this Sogi has been working at the school. Gyunyoung replied that about 3 months. Samuel said that special forces usually don't have a potbelly. The call ended and Junjiang told her fellow students that she went to check on 8th grade Lee Kwangpil. One of the girls said that he wasn't at school today. Gyunyoung asked why, but the girl doesn't know the reason. She also said that he wasn't there yesterday either. Junjiang suspected something must have happened to Gwanpil that he wasn't reporting to her. He had never ignored her like that before. She asked the girls about the guys who hung out with him, apparently they didn't know anything about them either. Then she asked a girl named Yoon Juhong to come over. Then we are taken to the house of the Yu family. Gon is kneeling at some apparatus and is suffering from another headache. They've set up a mini laboratory in the basement. Gong just has to lie down and press a switch to close the lid. Later, this device begins to rotate with his body, and it is completely bandaged with teepee. This is done so that Gon cannot move. Next, the capsule is filled with foam, it has good soundproofing and also softens the convulsions. Even the most acute attack is easier to survive with a bound body. The tight tape helps a lot, but if it weren't for the steel body of the capsule, Gon would have blown the whole thing apart a long time ago. While the capsule fulfills its purpose, all Gon can do is scream in pain. If it weren't for the tight soundproofing, he would scare the neighbors away with his screaming. These moments are a living hell for the hero, and he can't even pass out. A mother and father who are never around when you need them so badly. Gon had always wondered where he got his strength from, agonizing over time and again. Why was he the one to do it? But there had never been an answer. He's so dizzy he's about to vomit. It's like the world outside doesn't exist for him. Gon wants to writhing in pain, but he can't move a muscle. He stares stupidly down at a single point. Then Gon tries to raise his head and look at the wall opposite. It's exactly 10 meters away from the capsule, but he can clearly see the texture of the paint on the wall, every crack, every piece of peeling paint. Even the insects that live there, he can see every tendril. When the body begins to return to normal, Gon begins to see in focus, as if through a lens with a blurred edge and a clear center, then strange lines like the northern lights begin to appear. They move erratically, folding into bizarre waves. Are those infrared rays? Or is it ultraviolet? Thought the hero. Gon's eyesight seems to become superhuman, he can feel himself becoming a monster. His ears wake up next, picking up information at all volumes at once. His nervous system expands, analyzing thousands of sounds. The many sounds shake his eardrums, and Gon feels pain again, as if his ears and head had been pierced with a single red-hot nail. However, even in times of pain, there is no escape from all these sounds. It picks up all the sound frequencies at once, and they're about 20 times more than the human ear can hear. High, low, indescribable. The kind that can barely be called sounds at all. This was the third attack, and no one knows how many more are to come. Gon must somehow get used to it, learn to control the flow. He gets out of the capsule and goes to the charts that monitor his condition. He felt better, but his senses of sight, hearing, touch, and smell seemed to quadruple. This was beyond the control of a normal person. His body had become too sensitive to everything. Depending on how Gon used it, the power of all the senses could be increased up to several hundred times. Tremors. And it's not because of a seizure. What is Gon really like? Can he even be called a human being? Even his parents don't know the answer to that question. In fact, neither does he. There's no point in going to the hospital. The first time it happened was in the 5th grade of elementary school. He had his second attack in the 2nd grade of secondary school. That's when he was taken to the hospital, where he was told about this incurable disease. However, no one told him exactly what it was. Gon was horrified, unbearable pain at such a young age. He didn't want to die like this, he wanted to live badly. For the first time in his life, he thought seriously about the possibility of dying soon. After all this, he tried his best to find a way to survive. He began studying organic chemistry, biochemistry, cellular medicine, life science, pharmacology and physiology, and was obsessed with genetics. He grabbed every science as a chance. Since the clinical data he needed wasn't available, he even began studying programming to hack into the vaults of classified materials. All in the name of finding a drug that could cure Gon. But even the overseas clinical data he had obtained was of little use to him. No such cases had been recorded anywhere. At first, Gon thought he was just aging quickly, but this was clearly not aging. Because the destroyed flesh regenerated immediately. It was as if his cells were different from human cells. From his research, they were dividing at a tremendous rate, like super cells. He had first found a study about them in a US military hospital database. He had seen that article only once, after it was immediately deleted from the repository. At that moment, Gon was gripped by panic. If someone is deleting this data, then something like this has already been dealt with in this world? But what happened to that patient? Was he cured? Suddenly, Gon realized why he had been so careful to avoid hospitalization and examinations. It was not because of his parents' indifference or irresponsibility, but for a very different reason. He was afraid of what he was becoming. Was he really a monster? The panting starts again, reality floating, turning different colors. Everything is heard too clearly, even what is far away. It's important for Gon not to lose his mind at a time like this. He seemed to realize something. His mind was clear, and he realized many things. In spite of the unbearable pain in his brain, he was thinking more clearly than ever. His mother had tried to explain the reason, and he had believed her words that time. But the look on her face gave her away. Because of his keen sense of smell, Gon realized one thing: the smell of rotting cells. That's what he could smell. It was aging and regenerating cells at the same time. Now he can have no fear of agonizing again for days on end. Pain would no longer surprise him. Next, Gon is on the phone with his mother. He says that he is sick with flu, his whole body is aching, and he feels as if he is about to die. His mother told him to go to the hospital and get a certificate. Because she keeps getting calls from the school saying that Gon is absent without a valid excuse. The call ended, Gon put the phone down. He would have to break into the hospital again. He was suddenly shaken again, like a seizure, but that wasn't it, because it usually started with a headache. This seemed to be the final stage of his transformation. Toward the end of the seizure, he's been vomiting. But this is the first time he's vomited. It's like all his cells are revolting all at once. He chokes, all the stomach acid comes out. He didn't expect that, he's literally throwing up. His intestines are continuously contracting and relaxing. It seems to him that even the feces are about to come out. He is aware of everything, but there is nothing he can do about it. All of his senses are out of whack. His nervous system is simply overloaded. We need to regain control before it's too late. Otherwise, the process will be irreversible. We need to put the restraints back on the senses and balance the neural signals. What he didn't realize is that his body isn't ready for the strain. The cells keep renewing themselves over and over again. Gon threw up again, reached for his phone. It had only been an hour, but for him it was as if it had been 10 years. He had coped, endured. It seems that the adaptation to the heightened perception of all senses has been safely passed. He almost died while he was adapting. But after that, it's no big deal to die. But it would take a long time to fully recover. He was weak, and his nervous system was definitely out of whack. The fucked up thing is that he can't even rest afterwards. He needs to move more to strengthen his muscles and his nervous system. It's like softening clay and molding a jug out of it. Depending on how soft the clay is, the time to final set varies greatly. Even the dimmed light of the device continues to blind him. He's been absent from school for 4 days, and the teachers are going to kill him for sure. Gon gets up to look for his phone, but every movement hurts his joints. His hair is all dandruffy and falling out, some of it seems to have sat up. On top of that, he's extremely thirsty. He looked at his phone and there was a message from his mom, which made him happy. She told him to get well soon. Gon got up and made his way to the chair. He had only walked 5 meters and his breath was coming in like he was sprinting. Why did he have to suffer so much? Because of the pain, he's forgotten how many attacks he's had. It was the worst attack of all. He doesn't even know if he's alive or dead. No medicine can explain it all, what it is. Day 5, 6 a.m. Gon fell asleep in the bathtub with the solution. It contains a huge amount of beneficial trace elements. It will temporarily strengthen the unpleasant odor of decayed flesh, which would give him a taut body without excess skin. That's how Gon has adapted to grooming himself. It feels a little bit like a non-native layer of leather, but that's normal for Gon. The coating doesn't seem to be noticeable. The only problem is that the leather peels right off if you rub it hard. And if you apply pressure, it tears, creating a gap. You get a smell of dead tissue in your nose right away. Gon checked his voice, it seems to be fine. All that was left was a little treatment to make the skin even tougher. He invented household chemicals for his needs, including a solution that eliminates bad odor. The time between attacks is quite long, but it takes about 6 months to fully get used to the new sensations. There is no telling how long it will take this time. Given the extent of the changes, the recovery period may take longer. He's gonna have to apply this stuff 3 times a day. It's the only option, because he doesn't want to stink up the classroom. His body isn't bending to his will, he just has to figure out how to stabilize his skin's aging system. He's been working on it for a long time, but he can't do it without expert help. Gon got dressed and sat down on the chair again. He was in no hurry to get out of this hell, and it hurt to clench his teeth. But someday he would get out of this hell, and he would get what he wanted. His body is his temple. He'll perfect it. There are two things to do. The first is to study his physiology thoroughly. The second is to correct all the side effects based on the knowledge gained. To do that, he needs the one who created the human body, the creator of all things. He will be his first target, nothing more, nothing less. He really wants to know what is happening to him after all. Gon feels the answer is connected to something supernatural. Next we are taken to some office. There were two men arguing. They were discussing some kind of problem that had a lot of people involved. And this is just the beginning. "I don't sell out for money," said a curly-haired guy with glasses. His name was Manhwa. The other man urged him to help him. He pointed to his tie and said that Manhwa wouldn't even have enough to buy it with his current salary. He turned away and said that he had no need to spend such sums. His interlocutor said that he was ready to increase the amount by 5 million for him. He asked to trust him. This guy is offering a job in Manhwa's specialty. His company was once at the top, but now it's falling apart. Though their polymer material technology was innovative and perfect. For 3 years in a row, they suffered heavy losses due to weak management. Also, maintenance costs have gone up a lot. They must have a sea of problems in the system. This company was strong when Jong Muyang was in power. But since Jong Ilji came to power and merged with another company and developed a new business strategy, their own stock has fallen 10 times. Manhwa's interlocutor said to think hard about his proposal. According to him, the company is determined to maximize their efficiency. Their boss is very eager to get Manhwa. He was the best employee of the company, TriStar, but he started to miss their paycheck. He has to pay for his mother's hospital bills and his upcoming wedding. He started to bark at himself for deciding to get married. Manhwa, through tears, replied that he would think about the proposal. The guy was pleased, and said he would send details of the position in the mail. He also offered to call me when Manhwa thought of something, to which he agreed. The guy said Ha didn't need to be so distrustful, because he was trying to help him. He had been trying to pull him up since high school. Ha gets mad at him and jumps up from his chair. He doesn't believe a word he says. People can't be trusted at all. He raised his hand, and with the words, "Did you see that?" showed his middle finger to the guy across the street. He, exasperated, walked out into the street. Normally, he would have let a stiletto like that slip past his ears, but lately he's gotten very nervous, getting irritated over little things. Was he jealous of those who made good money? He was scratching his head when suddenly something alerted him. He decided to look at the palm of his hand and was stunned by something. Something strange had happened to him, and a cold drop of sweat ran down his face. Next comes a shot of Manhwa hurriedly running into the house, undressing on the way. He took off all his clothes and lay down on the couch. That time, on his arm, he saw hair falling out and pieces of skin torn off. He's prepared his body as much as possible. Because all hell is about to break loose. All he has to do is shrink in fear in anticipation. When he was in college, he took a sabbatical because of this disease. At that point, one of his arms and part of his leg were paralyzed. His left hand was so weak that he could barely hold a telephone. And his leg was shaky and he could only walk with strength. The hospital told him that more than 95% of the nerves that were responsible for the muscles were damaged, so recovery was impossible. Thanks to this, he was released from the army. The cause was cited as some kind of virus. But he doesn't think it's a virus. Because there were too many strange things going on. But Manhwa didn't tell anyone about it, otherwise he could have been put in a mental institution. No one knows what would happen to him if he decided to talk about it one day. So he hasn't gone to the hospital since then. So that's the end of his attack. He grabs the bucket and starts vomiting. Ha could take it, and was very happy about it. It was not for nothing that he had endured for 5 years. While he was rejoicing in his victory, another gagging fit came up. He stood at the mirror and began to examine his arm and leg. His left arm tingled, the nerves seemed to have recovered. All the affected parts had regained sensitivity. He wondered if he would be able to lift the heavy bag. He didn't believe it would ever happen. But it was definitely worth all his suffering. It was the best gift for him. All that was left for him to do was to clean himself up. In the mirror he looked tired but satisfied. He gingerly touched the reflection in the mirror with his finger. And then, from the point of touch, it was as if there were ripples all over the surface. And then the mirror was covered with ice. Not only with his hands, but also with other parts of his body, he began to freeze everything around him. Manhwa was surprised to think that he was a wizard. Next, we are taken back to Yugong's school. Gwangpil is sitting in the chemistry room with Junjiang, who decided to visit him. She tries to find out what happened to him, but he refuses. Junjiang tries to seduce Gwangpil with a kiss, but he jerks his head away. Junjiang is hurt by this, and he won't give in, not wanting to tell her who beat him up like that. She tried again to ask Gwangpil who beat him like that. But he said he wouldn't say anything. When Junjiang said that his henchman had not told her anything either, he rejoiced. Junjiang suspected something wrong. Li Gwangpil is the strongest high school student she knows. Who could have intimidated him like that? She started to think it was some gangsters or Namjoon's gang, but she dismissed it immediately, because they wouldn't just go into the neighborhood, and there was no point in her interfering in their affairs right now. Since Gwangpil doesn't trust her, she decided to use a trump card. Junjiang says they're breaking up. Gwangpil says he can't tell her about the man who hurt her anyway. Junjiang was flabbergasted. Gwangpil is even willing to part with her. She asked him for a camera and he got really nervous. He said he didn't have one. Junjiang asked why, and he got even more nervous. He said he gave the camera back to the school. Now Gyunyoung is sitting in class and a classmate is giving her a manicure. The class tells her that the camera is now at the 5th grade head teacher's office. They have some kind of event there. She wondered if they had crossed paths with Gwangpil. But she was told that it wasn't a fact. It seems that Gwangpil's camera was brought to the head teacher by a classmate named Yugong, Jong Yuna asked. This was the first time Gyunyoung heard that name. She asked who he was. She felt like she had missed some school gossip. The girl mumbled something and Gyunyoung slapped her, followed by a second slap, telling her not to squeak and bleat, but to speak clearly. With the last punch, she launched the girl to the opposite side of the classroom. Gyunyoung asked her 6 friends if they knew who Yugong was, but none of them had even heard of him. She got angry and told them to find out by tomorrow, even if they could smell his slippers and find him by smell, but to find out who he was, where he lived, and who he lived with. Night, Gong's house. Sona is carrying a soft drink to her brother and asks him if he's okay. She also asked where he had been missing. He replied that he was at his place, he was just too sick. Sona asked if he was sick again, to which Gon just nodded his head. She began to examine him. Nothing seemed to have changed, only that chemically odor from him. And what, you've gotten even stronger? Sona asked. But Gon guffawed that no one knew. The sister smirked and wondered. Not much was known about her brother's illness. But she believes it is more of a trait than a disease. Like a unique person, not like a monster. She was largely influenced by her mother's upbringing, who often repeated that although they are different, they are a family. And that there are no strangers in the family. Mother, father, brother, and she are one. He is an ordinary middle school student with a big secret. The only surprising thing is that people haven't noticed his features yet. It's their family secret. Gon asked Sona where mom was. She was on a business trip, having left for Busan last night. His father had not returned yet, only asking Sona about Gon's condition. She said that Gon was as elusive as a ghost. To which Gon replied that he was fine. His sister asked when his brother would be back at school. Gon planned to go to school next week. His sister called him lazy, and Gong settled down on the couch contentedly. School again. Gyunyoung is slowly gathering information about Yugong. She found out that he went to a prestigious school in Gangnam but got into trouble and transferred here last year. As for the trouble, it was the attempted rape of a high school girl. Gyunyoung called him a bastard, and was amazed at how she could not notice such a frame. Apparently, an idea popped into her head. She asked her own if they were done with their business and said it was time to hammer the arrow. Next, we get to Cha Minso's house. Minso was sitting in bed looking at her phone, and next to her was Yoon Young. She asked Minso how she was feeling, but she told her that she didn't know. Minso told Youngna that she asked for help. She looked at her phone and saw a familiar name, Yu Gong. Yona wanted to ask, but she kept silent. Because she didn't know how Minso felt at that moment. His father often mentioned this student and talked about him a lot. Yona was interested in him, so she searched for information about him. Other than being expelled from his previous school and transferring, he's no different from any other student. He might be crazy, but he's hiding it carefully. However, her father categorically denied it. He knows better. Looking at his facial expressions, Yona just believed it and didn't ask any more questions. Could it be that the quiet guy has one little secret? She doesn't know what she should do right now. If she puts in a little effort, the truth will come out. Maybe she should talk to him. Yona turned to Minso. She said she would definitely find someone to help her. So Minso shouldn't do anything more stupid. Yona was already on her way back home and thought about the problem. Because of the recent incident with Cha Minso, Park Gyunyoung's gang had gone quiet. For now, Yona is gathering evidence while her father tries to solve the problem. However, what should she do in this situation? Someone is following her. She decides to call her father urgently, and notices a girl she saw when she was leaving Minso's house. They follow her. Suddenly a guy with a handkerchief comes at her from behind, but Yona manages to dial her father's number. In the teacher's room, Teacher Sogi has collected a pile of papers. These were the denunciations on Park Gyunyoung that he had sorted out. Now it was time for him to meet with the principal. Since Sogi had served and received combat training as a special forces officer, it wasn't hard to get the information. With this much evidence, they definitely wouldn't turn away. Teacher Sogi stands in front of the vice principal, Ma Pilgan, who reprimands him. Since he was really bribed, he stands up for Gyunyoung, saying that she couldn't have done that. Gathering poor schoolchildren and organizing violence against them? Pilgan asked Soga's teacher. He replied that that was exactly what it was. It wasn't just his opinion, it was a fact. There was proof in the documents in the form of pictures. Isn't it obvious that she is guilty? Pilgan asks Soga if these are the originals, to which he says yes. Pilgan asks Sogi's teacher if he has told anyone else about this. Sogi asked why the vice principal was asking such a question. Pilgan replied that if all of this became public knowledge, the principal and him, as well as the students and even Sogi would get hurt. This all started about a year ago. They will be guilty of not noticing it for so long. The parents of all the kids aren't just gonna sit back. They're gonna riot, and then it's on to the city council. What kind of school is it where some students are allowed to bully others? What kind of parent would send their kid here? Because of this incident, the police may also get involved. If it comes to that, the school could be shut down. They will all be arrested along with the criminals. Pilgun asked Soga if that's what he wanted, to which he replies that he definitely does. The vice principal tried to calm Soga down, but he was pretty angry. What about the children? Let them continue to suffer here. Don't you care? Sogi asked. Pilgun replied that it's not like that. He wants Sogi to think it over again, because he's emotional. Suddenly, Sogi's cell phone rang. The call was ill-timed, and Sogi put the cell phone away in his pocket. He said no emotion, and there was nothing to think about. Pilgun is still trying to calm Sogi down, but it's all in vain. Sogi said their children are probably suffering right now. He also asked the question, what if someone is sold to some rapist? Pilgun replied that some children themselves have decided to trade their bodies to make money. Sogi resented that answer, but Pilgun told him to be quiet or they might be heard. Sogi grabbed the documents and put them in his bag, turned around and walked to the door. The deputy director asked where he was going, to which Sogi replied that he was going to the police station. Pilgun said not to even think about going there. Sogi said not to even try to stop him. Pilgun said that hardly anything would change after that. Sogi replied that if the police did not help, he would go to the prosecutor's office, and if they could not help either, he would involve the media. If the media did not help, he would bring the issue to the State Duma for discussion and organize rallies. After these words, teacher Sogi left the office. He sat at a street table, and thought about the fact that he was about to lose his job. But what could he do? Going to the police with this information would be risky. He pulled out his phone, which was still ringing with his daughter. Then we were shown the deputy director talking to someone on the phone. On the other side of the phone he was told to work as usual, everything will be done for him. He's sorry, but he wants to lose his prestigious job over this. After all, adult life isn't sugar-coated either. This will help the students grow up to be strong people. Humanity is not honored at this time. The only thing of value is power. Next we are again shown Sogi sitting and smoking at a street table. Despite his defiant speeches, he wasn't going to go to the police. He doesn't understand why Yun is not answering his phone. But then he saw something frightening. He got a text saying his daughter was at an abandoned construction site near Jinsen Park. He needs to bring everything he's dug up there, or something terrible could happen to his daughter. Also, all the originals and copies he has gotten must be removed and he must not do anything else. Sogi started to regret it. He should have picked up the phone back then, in the deputy director's office. They decided to blackmail Sogi with his own daughter. They want his materials, they want to cover up the case. But this time, Sogi is not going to back down. He was the only one in doubt whether to jeopardize his daughter or give up all the documents. They had crossed a line they shouldn't have. He lit a cigarette, covering the flame with a palm shaking with fear. He decided to get his daughter out first. Some kind of car pulled up behind him. It was time to remember his youth, when he'd been in the special forces. Back then, he'd done tougher missions. He sent a text message to someone, tossed his cigarette away, and walked to the car. Yugun got a message from Yoon Seogi. Some untitled file. He was amused by the fact that it could be porn and he could sue Sogi for distributing pornography. He thought maybe he shouldn't reply at all. He looked at the file and was shocked and decided to call Sogi, but it didn't work. Next, we were shown young Yushik playing in a computer club. His phone rang. It was Gong. Yushik picked up the phone, and when he heard Gon's voice, he yelled at him, because Gon had been out of school for a long time. He replied that he had been sick for several days in a row. According to Yushik, Gon turned off his phone and didn't get in touch. Everyone at school thought he was truant. What could such a healthy forehead be sick in the first place? Gon said he just had a cold, with a fever and everything. Yushik understood, and asked why Gon had called. Gon wanted to know some news from school. While Yushik is losing, Gon asked about Yoon Sogi, if there's anything wrong with him. Yushik wondered what he was after, but Gon asked him to just tell him if he knew anything. He said that Sogi had been working on Cha Minso's case for the past few days. He called the disciples, seemingly gathering dirt. Gong asked about Cha Minso. Yushik replied that she was the same girl who slit her wrists on her arm. It seems she's been bullied since first grade. Gon asked for more details. Yushik was curious about Gon and Minso's connection. But Gon asked who had bullied her and why, and how it had led to the suicide attempt. Yushik said it was complicated. Gong didn't care, he was in no hurry. Yushik was interested in the matter and suggested that Gon tell him everything when he met him. Gon said he understood and they would see each other at school. Gon looked at the message from Cha Minso once more. A girl he doesn't even know was asking for his help, as well as a message from Mr. Soga. If I sent you this letter, it means I need your help. I'm in serious trouble right now, so don't call me. Please find my daughter, her phone number, my computer password. And here is the blackmailer's number. As soon as Gon dialed the number, a rough male voice sounded, grinned into the receiver and disconnected. At this time, some distant humming was heard, and then the signal was gone. Gon didn't know what he should do. The guys who bullied Cha Minso are kind of from her class. Young Yushik only mentioned that Park Gyunyoung was behind it. She has the most influence among the high school gangsters. She's also very enterprising. There are also dirty rumors about her personal life, mostly at night.